I'm gonna have to use my jacket. No. Oh yeah, we can do that. All right, let's go ahead and get started. What are we talking about today? Anybody know? Multiple. Okay. All right. That's what I planned on talking about. So, oh, it was right there. Dang. I didn't want to ask that before I pulled that up. But anyway, y'all can read it, so good. All right, so as far as, I won't read all of this out, but you should take a look at it because I heard, well, we want to make sure we don't forget anything. Well, this is everything right here. So if you want to know, hey, what's going to be on the test? What should I concentrate on when he's talking? This is what you should concentrate on, okay? We'll go through each of these things. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you, for the folks that are in the room hanging out with me today, it looks like we don't even have half the people. I think we'll be able to get through 1 through 5 today. And we'll focus on 6 on Tuesday. That's the plan. I won't go through all of these, but the other thing of what should I know what all of these mean, because these will be the words that I'll be using over the next 2 weeks. All right, so let's just kind of start off with the first slide on a review. Welcome to the party. Give me, who knows what B is? What would you call B? Well, let's not all speak at once. Somebody throw their hand up and we call you out and tell me what B is. You can guess. I won't be too hard on you. No way? I got a call. Surely you know what B is. Come on.
Initial concentration.
Initial concentration? Good guess. It's not right yet. Huh? Threshold. Now. What we're talking about, this is B, this point right here. Loading dose. Good guess. I have to wake y'all up. You don't know? Onset of action. So B is the onset of action. This is when the drug is starting to work. What's A? So I skipped. I shouldn't have skipped A. What is A?
Minimum concentration.
Minimum concentration. Very, very close. Can anyone help him out? Tell him what he missed.
Of effectiveness.
Huh?
Effective.
Minimum effective concentration. Very, very close. Like a trough. Minimum inhibitory concentration. Minimum inhibitory concentration. So once it reaches, assuming, so I said close, assuming that the MIC and the MEC, the minimum effective concentration, so when the drug will start to work, just because it starts inhibiting bacteria doesn't mean that it's being effective necessarily. But let's assume that it does in this. Then this is when the drug is working. It's not working below here. So that's the onset of action. So MIC, B, onset of action. Then what is C? Cmax or peak. So in the real world, Cmax is called the peak. What about D? Everybody got quiet on me. What about D? The what? That's the trough or C-min. And then what is F? The duration of action. All right. So I thought this should have been reviewed, and it sounds like it is. All right. So today we're going to talk about multiple IV infusions, but I think it's important at this point, you talked about everything else. We're building up to this. I think it's important though that you know the difference. So you guys, in a couple weeks, you'll be going into, or a week or so, going into the final, and you're like, everything will be all there. Which equation should I use? I tell people all the time, I don't like when folks memorize stuff. Yes, certainly you'll have to rely on your memory, but the more and more you learn or memorize, then the more confusion things get. I don't know which one it is. Well, if you understand it, then you know. So, you talked about IV bolus. So this is a single IV bolus, and this is the equation that you use. Can anyone tell me how this can be expressed differently? All right, here's some mumbling. I just can't make it out just yet. Can I write that any different?
Do you write C naught times E negative 10 times 10?
Yeah, that's what it is.
But this is
Can we express it in terms of amount?
You could express it in terms of amount. How?
So amount,
If it's A0.
N naught.
I'm going to just call it dose, because
Of
dose
the
and
volume.
amount is the same thing. But if I added the volume of distribution here, couldn't I do that? Couldn't I write it like that? Okay. Single infusion. You remember this is a single infusion. How is that different? How can I write this equation differently? Or why is this equation like that?
We can write it in terms of loading dose. So instead of N over K, you can just write loading dose over V.
Not really loading dose. You can call it dose. Oh, well, loading dose because it's single. Yeah, sure. But let's just keep it like in terms of this. So a dose, as you said, over what?
Clearance.
No, not clearance. Sure you can in terms of clearance, but I'm saying if you just change this to dose, you have clearance already represented with your KEL here. So what is missing? If you change this to dose, what is missing? Time, right? A rate is an amount over time. So then we know, now that we have an infusion, we need to have a dose, an amount over time. And since it's an infusion, is it being eliminated from the beginning? From the beginning, so that's why you have to add the KEL there. Again, this amount over time is K sub 0. And then what is the rest of that? What does this represent? Elimination? Let's,
The fraction of the dose that is eliminated.
fraction of what? That's being eliminated? You looking at it? I don't know. I'm trying to understand.
Yes.
It's the fraction of the dose being eliminated. All right. So we know that it's continuing, right? Here, we gave the dose, it's just being eliminated at this point, right? Here, we're continuing to infuse the dose. So there's a fraction that's of drug that's remaining in the body, and there's some that you're adding on top of it. So we know that that's expressed this way, right? That's what you told me. It's built from here to here. So then, you told me recently, I don't know, a week or two ago, and talked about multiple IV bolus doses. So as you can see, we now, how did this equation change? this equation change? We're talking about a single.
Because now we have intervals,
Now you have intervals. Explain what that means.
like frequency, like.
Yeah, frequency. Keep going. Huh? N is the number of doses. Yes. Yeah.
Give it multiple doses.
Right. So he was adding on what you said. You're talking about the times. Yeah. You're saying it's multiple doses. So you're putting doses on top of other doses, right? So it's just not this one and it goes away. I'm putting it on top of another dose. So basically, what you're telling me is that there's an accumulation. There's an accumulation at here some time interval. Now, of course, we changed this. Oh, well, that should have been dosing interval. Of course, all that did is that moved that over here, right? So in expressing that, we just moved the elimination part over here. And this now represents what you have. I have the dose that you gave plus the dose that's been accumulated by some number of doses, right? And then those will be eliminated from the body, right? Okay. That accumulation that we talked about, we call superposition. So when one drug is given, then the next dose is now superimposed on top of the other dose. And then at a certain point, it should plateau off, right?
Yes.
What's that point? Steady state, right? Not necessarily C steady state, let's just call it steady state. When you tell me C steady state, that's a level, right? What's the C for? Concentration. So that's a level at steady state, but it's not necessarily steady state. That's a level at steady state, right? So this plateauing is steady state. All right, so I'll review. So in this particular class, it can range. You'll see for some drugs, it can be at 3 half-lives, 3 to 5 half-lives for most drugs. Some things up to 7. But for this particular class, we're going to use 5. 5 half-lives, we're going to call it at steady state at that point. Steady state is independent of the size of the dose, right? Or wrong? If I give more of the drug, can I get to steady state faster? You can?
Yes.
All right, so that's why I'm asking these questions. So, what does independent mean? Does not depend on the size of the dose. So I gave you a trick question. If I gave more, will I get there faster? You say yeah. If I get a loading dose. Am I getting a steady state quicker because I got a loading dose? Remember, let me go back for a second. And I'm confusing you on purpose. Or at least attempting to. In this particular drawing, right, and we talked about this when we got there, right? In this particular drawing, is there a loading dose given? You say yeah?
No, because it starts at the bottom.
Make up your mind now. Is there a loading dose or not?
If it started from the bottom, no.
Started from the bottom now here?
I don't know how to coin the
I
phrase.
apologize. It's all wrong?
Yeah.
What's that what?
Oral starts from the origin.
Oral starts from the origin. What does oral have to do? We talking about IV.
Basically, like the maintenance, the IV.
It's the maintenance. This
Yes.
is a single fixed dose that's given multiple times. Have to be. When you give a loading dose, you try to see if I, huh?
It starts at a like the concentration that you're giving or something like that.
All the loading dose does if I gave more, because I know, well, I wrote it a little bit too much there. If I gave more, all I'm doing is estimating, saying that here's my Cmax at steady state, right? And I know if I just gave let's just call it 500 milligrams. I know if I gave 500 milligrams, each time, it's gonna look like this, right? But if I want to reach a concentration that's more like steady state, then I need to give more. I'm not gonna get to steady state any quicker, but if I want to get to that concentration that Cmax will be at steady state, then maybe I have to give 1250 milligrams the first time, then follow it by 500, and then I will be at the steady state level, but not at steady state. I'm not getting to steady state any quicker. I'm just trying to get to, the reason why I corrected you earlier, I'm trying to get to see steady state quicker, but it ain't getting to steady state any quicker. So that's what a loading dose does. So increasing the dose or giving a loading dose doesn't get you to steady state quicker. It may get you to see steady state, right? Because I'm estimating that of what that concentration might be at steady state. So I give it. So steady state isn't, you don't reach steady state. It's going to be 5 half-lives. Yes?
So, giving a loading dose or increasing the dose only helps you get to the steady state, but not at a steady state.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do you understand how those two things are different?
No.
About the action, like, I know this one's different.
Okay. So, would you agree, before I wrote the red stuff, we would call this at steady state?
Mhm.
Why? Because the concentration is plateauing? Okay. So if the maximum concentration, is the maximum concentration plateauing at this point? When I give 1250 milligrams, is the concentration plateauing?
No.
No. So is C steady state and steady state the same thing? No, absolutely not. If I took this level, this level after the first dose, after the loading dose, might be equal to this level. But I'm still not at steady state.
Why?
You saying why? You just told me. I'm not at steady state until my concentrations start plateauing off. I'm not at, once I give this loading dose, right? Then I give this 500, that 500 is probably gonna be right here. Just like you see right here, I give 500 again. It's gonna be right there. It's not gonna be plateauing because I gave this loading dose.
So compared to what you have on your graph, what part is steady state and what part is steady state?
Let me say it again. Overlook the red for a second. We're at steady state. Remember, C at a time of time. What is steady state? If I told you, when will we be at steady state? How would you tell me you'll be at steady state? Tell me that one more time. At a point in time, that's what I wanted to hear. You're gonna give me a point in time. You're not gonna give me a concentration. I'll tell you that the half-life for this particular drug is 10 hours. And you're gonna say, when will we be at steady state? Huh? 50 hours. In 50 hours. So, by me giving 1250 milligrams, am I gonna get to 50 hours any quicker? No. I'm not gonna do it in 25 hours now. It's still not going to start plateauing until it's at steady state. But if I mathematically say at 50 hours, because of this equation that we have, that I think that the steady state level, the C max, is going to be, let's just call this 45. 45 milligrams per deciliter. Well, then I say, what dose do I need to have a Cmax of 45 milligrams a deciliter from the first dose. So it's 1250. Am I gonna follow this up with 1250? No. I'm gonna follow it up with whatever the maintenance dose is, which let's just call it in this case 500 milligrams. So just like you see on this graph, you will see the same thing. In my first dose, maybe I would have gotten to a concentration if I took a max level after that first dose. What did I call this? I forgot. 40 or something?
45.
45? That's 45. After the second dose, how much do you think it'll be? Sure, but do you think it'll be 45? Greater than 45? Less than 45? It's probably gonna be less than 45. Huh? It's probably gonna be less than 45. It's probably gonna be a little less than 45. Then when I give my next dose, it might be at 45 again. However, you say, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would I do it? If I would have given the first dose may have been at 30 if I didn't do a loading dose. Second dose may have been at 35. Third dose may have been at 42. Then the fourth dose may be at 45. Fifth dose may have been at 45. So we're saying I'm getting closer to what that is by that concentration by giving this loading dose. Because I started off high. It's already at 45. That second dose, it may be down again to 42. Then the next one, now we're at 45. So we were in that range, that steady state level range for more time. The only reason why you would give a loading dose. So let me stop for a second and say, let's say the effectiveness. So remember I said MEC and MIC are not the same, right? Let's say in order for this drug to be effective, it needs to be at this level. Is it effective here? Is it effective here? So it's not effective until, so do you think it's a good idea to say, you know what, I know you have an infection, but give me 2 days for it to start working. Then you'll feel better. So I say it's gonna take 2 days for me to keep it at that level. So on your first day, let me give you this big dose so that we know that it's going to be effective as it's building up to stay effective. Does that make sense? So you know the difference between C steady state, a concentration, and actual steady state? Which is that point in time? All right. Independent of the size of the dose. What about dosing interval? If I give it more often, we'll get there quicker. Yes? I see some heads shaking and some doing this. So the ones that are saying yes. Explain that to me. Can you get to 50 hours quicker by giving it every 8 hours? Absolutely. It's gonna take 50 hours, y'all. Just because you give it more often, it's gonna take 50 hours to get to steady state. Your concentration is gonna increase. So if you keep giving 1250, what's gonna happen with 1250? If I keep giving 1250.
Probably will reach like the toxic region.
The level is gonna increase, but it's still gonna take 50 hours to get to steady state. Because that drug takes 50 hours to get to steady state, period. If you give it more often, your level might increase, but it's gonna take 50 hours to get to steady state. So again, do you see where C steady state and steady state is not the same thing? All right, don't confuse yourself. So the size of the dose, steady state is not dependent on the size of the dose. It's not dependent on the dosing interval. It's not dependent on the number of doses. In this particular drawing, we say, hey, after about the third dose, you're getting a C steady state. But it's because after the third dose, based on the dosing interval, you're just at the 50-hour mark at that time. Okay? So it's independent of the size of the dose, the dosing interval, or the number of doses. We clear? But it is dependent on the half-life of the drug, right? So that's what we just said. If the half-life of that drug is, elimination half-life of the drug is 10 hours, and it's taking 5 half-lives, then 5 times 10 is 50 hours, based on the half-life of the drug. All right, is that clear to everyone? Since it's so clear, let's do some quick testing. Here's our first case. Write it down on a sheet of paper. Somebody tell me how you did it. Don't make me call out anybody. And I made it real straightforward. I gave you the equations and all this stuff. Anybody got my first name? Anyone? 10.46? I don't really know. I didn't do it. Did you do it? Kim? Anyone agrees with that? 10.46? Okay. I'm gonna say 10.46 is wrong. Why? Let's look at the instructions. Round the dosing interval to the nearest 8, 12, 18, 24, 36, or 48. So if you calculated 10.46, what do you want to do? Go with whatever one you want, but yes.
Is it 12?
What is what? 8.
It's the same thing as the multiple albedos, loaded dose, and it's a ounce minimum,
Agree.
What's the question? Need some numbers. You want to have a loading dose and a maintenance dose one? 2,000 micrograms? 300 micrograms? What is that? Is that the loading dose or the maintenance dose? Hey, Doc.
Can I make an announcement?
Yeah, go and make your announcement.
Sure.
Yes, sir. I got to stop for Dr. Liang. I mean, you know that.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here to make an announcement for the IB certification.
Yes.
We got a clear to go.
Yes.
Need to find a date.
Okay.
I was thinking about second week of the January, right after New Year's celebration, everything. From the 8th to the 16th. Sounds okay with everyone? Or still in the vacation mode? Okay. So IB certification requires 20 hours total. Okay. But we can make a few of these sessions online, so you don't need to be in person here. You do need to be in person for the final exam, which I believe is 3 or 4 hours, online, monitored, in-house, and actual hands-on. So you, perhaps I believe you will have to be on campus for a particular one day.
Okay.
And the rest of that, hopefully we can do the online interaction, some kind of stuff like that. So our IB certification can hold 20 students each time. 20. We may be able to handle 20 or 40 with a different shifting for each day there. So I was thinking about, do you guys think that January 8th to 16th is the whole week, including weekends?
Whatever you have.
Sounds reasonable with you guys? Okay. All right. So if that, because I have to handle the P3 as well. And P3 was on rotation, so they need more of the different accommodations. So if this is good, I will talk to the instructor and I will send the whole email to you guys. When email comes out of it, you can pick up dates, whichever dates you want to go. Okay, now here's the deal. You have to buy the book. The book linked with the exam, so that school cannot cover. The rest of the fees, everything school covers already. Book, I guess, $20 no. So,
200 something or 20 something?
200.
I think it's like 250, right?
250 or something like that. The book, the everything, including.
I think it's 20.
Huh?
Only 20.
Right.
Niggas like 250.
So when the link sent out to the whole class, you will see the detailed instructions, everything. Okay. Now one thing I want to, what, this is the whole class?
It's the whole class that's present. I got the whole class.
It's okay, Dr. Lee.
All right. Okay. So in the past, we have few students no show for the register time. So I want to make sure that you guys, if you can make it, let us know. Because if you don't show up, the school pays them. So we lost a lot of money. So end up we have to go to the student service to put in your documentation you missed something. So that's a very serious matter because literally we're losing money because if you don't show up, because the slot's being occupied. Okay. So when the email comes out of it, I'll try to see if you can get into these slots. You only have to register for 1 day. Okay. And there are instructions for you guys to follow to how to purchase a book, where to show up, how do you register all the information, how to contact the instructor service. Sounds okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr.
Dr. Lee.
Haber.
Got two questions, Doc. You can't leave.
Oh, any questions? Yeah.
This is not mandatory, correct? We've already done it.
All right. Good question. That's not a mandatory, but you better check with Dr. Estes still in charge for the rotation?
No, Dr. Davila.
Dr. Davina, whoever charging rotation. Because we don't want a case coming back that the student did not get IB certification, they can rotate in the hospital, then we cannot make up because I'm putting you guys as first priority, P3. And then I open up to the rest of people who wants to catch up, whoever missed it before. So if you miss this one, next time may not be guaranteed, okay? Because
So
that's
just
one-
make sure, I just want to add on that, Doc.
Yeah.
When you say you've already done it, remember there are two different programs. So there's a IB certification for technicians and there's one for pharmacists. So the one that you're doing here is the one for pharmacists. That'll be good for your pharmacist license for into perpetuity. So make sure that you're saying, well, I already done it. And if it's the one for technician, once you're finished, it won't be valid anymore. So make sure if you've already done it, it is the one for pharmacists.
Do you have to be recertified after a certain amount of years?
For this one, you know.
Oh, okay.
Well, I strongly encourage you guys take it because if you go outside by yourself, it's much expensive, right?
It is, but you know, if you're working for someone, they'll pay for it and that kind of thing. So that's what I'm saying. It is possible that some people have done it already, but make sure that it is not the one for pharmacy technicians.
Yeah.
Is the only ones that you can do it?
Yes, that's what he said. There's no guarantee it'll be offered again for you at another year. It'll be offered for the students in the course, the P1 students every year, but it may not be offered for anyone else. All right, thanks,
Okay,
Doc.
thank
I don't know,
you.
they were clapping when you came in. They weren't clapping when I came in. All right, finish this up. We gotta go. All right. So, based on the dose that you and the dosing interval that you use, go ahead and calculate the Cmax and the Cmin.
Did you get an answer?
No, I didn't get an answer.
Can you
That's
teach?
it.
That's a question, sir.
What's the question?
The first one you gave us, we got the answer as 10.4.
Yeah.
But you said we should round it to the dosing interval. which
Sure.
is what?
Huh?
Is 12 okay for it?
Is what?
12.
Is 12 on that guideline that I gave?
The next one.
Well, it's okay then.
Okay.
The last test was 300 micrograms.
What?
300 micrograms.
For a long dose? Dr. Christina, if you just say.
Because the volume was 0.25 micrograms, multiplied by the kilograms.
I'm gonna take a picture.
But you use her actual.
Yeah, so,
For the
so,
multiplied by the kilograms.
You might wanna use the,
But did you use her actual weight?
you gotta use
You use her
IBW.
actual weight?
You gotta use IBW.
say what now?
I think you do adjusted body weight.
I just did it.
How he got 300? Yeah. So don't worry about, that's why I'm not giving you any answers, okay? We'll
Right.
talk about it later. You worry about using what you came up with. So whatever you came up with, are there multiple answers? The answer is yes. You can round different ways. So that's why I'm not worrying about answer. Worry about the answer that you came up with. If you ain't calculating, then don't worry about nothing. Just sit there. But for all, if you following along, do what I told you to do. Go ahead and calculate your C max and your C min.
I have a question. So for the equation that the calculator that gave us, C max does not have T fusion. It only has tau.
Correct. Because we're not talking about the one Dr. Felder gave you. So, did you hear this question? The equation that Dr. Felder gave you, it didn't have, it's not the same. I just went through that in the beginning. Dr. Felder went up to multiple IV bolus dosing. This is infusion. Different, right? So, yes, great observation. The equation is not exactly the same because you have to factor in the infusion. It's not that different, but it is different.
What is the dose? CP, he gave us C
The major reason for the difference,
micrograms per milliliter.
the major reason for the difference is because
max
on an
desire.
IV bolus, you're not giving the drug on top of the other drug, right? Just like with a bolus, it goes up and it goes all the way down. Then you're gonna go up and go down again. On an infusion, I'm gonna start it again. That's why I pointed it here, right here. You're putting it here. You're not giving it here. So you have to subtract out that time to get it at that point.
Did you give us the dose?
No, you calculated the dose. You calculated the interval, then you calculated the dose.
That's what I'm saying.
Right?
What's the loading dose?
What is CP desired? Dr.
The
Kibble?
loading dose is the dose?
No. That ain't the loading dose.
The maintenance dose is the dose?
She's saying, are you saying what CP desired is? 'Cause
No.
it's not CP.
All right. So, just like I drew on here, you're gonna give a loading dose to get to the desired concentration from the first dose, but the dose is not the loading dose. Your dose is gonna be the maintenance dose. That's the dose that you're gonna always use, is the maintenance dose. Unless you plan on keep giving the loading dose over and over. But your dose is the maintenance dose. I heard the question again. Well, what is the CP desired? Well, you tell me. You want to hit the top or the bottom? Which one of them is telling you the effectiveness of the drug? The top or the bottom? The top one. What is the bottom one telling you? It's telling you what? It doesn't work now. All right, so okay. So I want to say it a different way. When in any drug that we're doing maxes and mins, for the most part, your max is an estimate of efficacy. So you said whether or not the drug works. And see, men is for safety. We want to make sure that the drug is being cleared. If this C-min is too high, then what do we, well, we'll talk about that later. But if the C-min is too high, then it's not being cleared as we expected. So whatever we think the patient's elimination rate constant is and what the patient's actual elimination rate constant is different. Because it's not being cleared like we think it's being cleared. So we're not shooting for the bottom, we're shooting for the top. All right, so let's, oh, that's just the question. I meant to. Okay. All right, so what I want to do is I gave you the same thing with vancomycin. So do this. We can do this later, but it's the same equation, same thing. I just gave you an extra practice here. And I want you to do the same thing. Calculate the dosing interval and I want you to actually compare. This is a simplified version of the equation, and then use the other equation that I gave you and compare your two answers. But we won't do that now. One of the things that you're going to see, and again, on Tuesday we'll pick up from here, and I'll talk about the answers and we'll go through it. But your initial dosing and dosing intervals you can calculate, right? What would I need to give you in order for you to calculate that? So I put on here, based on the pharmacokinetic profile, and I need to know what plasma levels I'm looking for, right? So if you had the desired plasma levels and you know the pharmacokinetic profile, you can calculate the dose and the dosing interval, right? I don't know.
I'm not seeing the A equals C times B.
So, in order to calculate the dosing interval, what do I need? I need the plasma levels. I need to know the elimination rate constant, and I need to know the infusion count. Right? In order to calculate the dose, I need the volume of distribution, elimination rate constant, time of infusion, and dosing interval. If I knew that, of course, we're still going back to the desired levels. Couldn't I calculate the dose? That's all that's saying. We know that with repeated infusions at constant doses and dosing frequency, remember that now, if I'm changing up the frequency, will it get to steady state? If I'm changing the frequency? I mean, it will at some point, but if you're making adjustments, then it's not going to plateau. It's going to keep changing, up, down, right? So, it has to be constant dose, constant frequency. Yes, they will superimpose on top of each other, but at a certain point they will plateau after 5 half-lives, right? Patient's renal function correlates with the elimination rate constant and the half-life. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but it was, as I mentioned before, your elimination rate constant, well, you know that the elimination rate constant and the half-life are correlated, right? Yes? No? Maybe? How? Huh? Correct. So what does that mean? If your KEL goes up, what happens to your half-life? It goes up?
No.
It goes down. Because of the correlation that you're talking about, inversely correlated. Well, when you're talking about a medication that's renally eliminated, What happens? What do you do to estimate your renal function? Clearance? And that ain't Wakanda. That's X. Not clearance. Creatinine clearance, right? GFR, right? What happens when creatinine clearance goes up? Now think about this for a second. Let me do it a different way. I'm gonna do it a different way. I'm gonna do it this way. What happens if it goes down? Because that's more likely, right? That you lose renal function, not gain renal function. What happens when it goes down?
KEL decrease.
Huh? KEL goes up.
No, decrease. Because that's
So what I often say is that, sometimes KEL, what is KEL, what is half-life? It's kind of hard. The easiest thing is kind of think about half-life first. If you're not able to clear the drug as much, what do you think will happen to the half-life? It goes up or down? It'll increase, right? And you already said that these two are inversely related. So remember, it's renally eliminated. So your KEL and your clearance are going to go in the same direction. Now, what is the KEL? Tell me what that is. What does rate mean? Amount per time, right? So if you can't eliminate, your kidneys are going down. Do you think you'll increase the amount that you're going to be able to eliminate?
No.
Or decrease?
Decrease.
Okay? So it should be, these correlations should just make a whole lot of sense, right? You're not going to eliminate more working its way. You're going to eliminate less, which means it's going to take a longer time. So that should be pretty straightforward. All right, any other questions for me? As I mentioned on Tuesday, we'll pick up with the answers to these questions and we'll talk about why they are so and what adjustments will need to be made as a result of it. But make sure that you go in, do case 1, case 2, because we're going to pick up from there.
You posted the slides already?
Yeah, I posted the slide. On Blackboard.
They're
Cam, whatever. On campus, what? No, I'm Blackboard.
You sure you don't want to post the answers after?
I'm sure I'm positive. I'm going to post those answers on Tuesday. I'm going to post them on Tuesday. But in the beginning of the class, not because I'm going to be coming up after we calling people. Tell me what. We're going to start right there. And here's homework. So you got 2 homework assignments, right?
Yeah, case 1.
First homework assignment is what?
Case 1 and
2.
Say it loud. Case 1 and case 2, right? We're going to hit the ground running 9 o'clock on Tuesday. Other homework, if you're either in a Tuesday lab or Wednesday lab, this is what we're going to pick up here in lab.
Oh, you gonna be teaching lab too?
You were getting all excited thinking you were going to only see me today. You're going to see me morning and afternoon for 2 weeks. Okay?
I didn't mean it like that.
Yeah, well, that's how I took it. I'm like, what you tell you gonna come back? The good Lord say the same. Yes, I'm coming back. You don't have to deal with me. You ain't seen me in all this time. Now, all I get is 2 weeks. Right before your holidays, I want to make sure your turkey go down good. Right? All right, so there's 2 cases for the homework. So this is number 1, this is number 2, and we'll talk about this in lab. All right. So I'm gonna tell y'all that Dr. Felder was my teacher. Really? I know he looked. My kids can't believe it either. You sure? He ain't. He probably started when he was 3. But when I was in class, I didn't really like Dr. Felder. He used to, what they used to call pick on people. call you out or whatever. And I was ready. I used to sit in the back. He called me up to the board. He ain't call me no more. So, but I've always been okay with that. So I'm gonna call you to the board and all this stuff, but I'm not like Dr. Fielder. Dr. Fielder, he's kind of a nice guy. I ain't all that nice. So, I'm not pleased with the folks that ain't show up today. So don't give me no excuses for them. Y'all can't. Not pleased at all. I'm not answering any questions about what we talked about today for people who weren't here. So I really don't care if they got questions. This was their opportunity to find out. We're starting from here on Tuesday. All right?
And did you take room?
Yeah, I know who everybody is. Do I have?
Let me hear it.
Because I would hate to email and you don't get a response. What's your office hours right now?
Now you don't need my office. We're gonna spend a lot of time in the lab. We're gonna spend a lot of time in the lab. So I said make sure you do case 1 and 2, right? Because we're picking up from there.
Okay.
Don't be doing it in class. We meet at 9 o'clock. So have it done. I don't care if you did it wrong. If you did it wrong, we'll make it right. But I didn't know what to do, and I gave you all of the equations. Now, I ain't in that. Same way about the lab. Oh, I got confused. I did this other homework. Well, that's for lab. But when we start lab, if you're Tuesday at 1 o'clock, I'm expecting it to be done. Or you gotta go. Okay?
Because you ain't playing.
No, I'm not playing. Because this is math. The only way you can do math is by doing it. Sitting here looking at me, that ain't helpful. Okay? This is easy math too, if you do it. Now I didn't say you're gonna get it all right. I'm just saying you can't be easy if you don't do it. So as I mentioned, on Tuesday we're picking up from case 1 and 2 that are in the slides, in the lab, homework. Have it done. We meet from 1 to 3:50.
2 o'clock.
You said 2:45. Oh, 4. Oh yeah. I'm gonna try not to keep y'all at 4. I'm gonna try to get y'all by 3:50 or whatever. If I can. Okay?
3:30.
You say he on what?
We stay till like 4:30 sometimes.
Yeah, I know. But I'm gonna try to make sure we get out at 3:50. But the way we get out at 3:50, if you come prepared, man, we can work through all this. We can get it done. But if you're not prepared or here's the thing, this is why I'm saying I do it, because I told you I don't want my time wasted, but I don't want other people's time wasted. Some people, they did it already, and they're like, man, we still on this same route? Why I gotta stay to 4 o'clock because somebody else didn't do their homework? You know what I mean? All right, that's my spiel, I'm sticking to it. Any questions for me? What was the question? Like, why you move all the way to the front? You have a real good. Like, you want to make sure I'm gonna go out this door there. You know what I'm saying? JD, he gonna move to the front. Like, I'm gonna make sure. All right, if there's no more questions, we done.